had a very Merry Christmas. Hopefully you guys are together with your family, enjoying Christmas, because that is what Christmas is all about. So hopefully Christmas has gone well for you guys watching this video. I know it gone well for me. I love Christmas more than anything in the world. So I had a great Christmas this year. Hopefully you guys had too. Now, back to the end of the year list for 2022. I love doing these videos for you guys. I love rehashing the movies that came out this year. So, continue off with the negativity list. I've done my top 10 worst movies of 2022. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. That video was a lot of fun. Now it's time to talk about the movies that I was anticipating for, but those movies sort of let me down. These are my top 10 most disappointing movies of 2022. Now, the difference between this and my worst list is that none of these movies I specifically hate. Some of these movies I did enjoy, but those are just the movies that didn't turn out the way I was expecting. I was anticipating for those movies, or at least I was giving those movies a chance, but it didn't turn out the way I thought. But like I said, these aren't terrible movies. Some of these movies I did enjoy, but I wish those movies could have been better. That's what the disappointing list is for me on this channel. So, no honorable mentions, let's just get straight to it. These are my top 10 movies that I was anticipating for, but they didn't turn out the way I was expecting. So, let's start off this list with number 10. So, let's start with my top 10 most disappointing movies of 2022 with Uncharted. Now, I'm a fan of the Uncharted games. I thought those games were some of the best PlayStation games that I ever made, and those games are just a lot of fun. So, when I heard they're making an Uncharted movie, I was interested. The casting though, Tom Holland as young Nathan Drake and Mark Wahlberg, I wasn't sure, but the trailers gave me a chance to basically give this movie some hope. But the movie just turns out as a generic adventure film that I would say is forgettable. I think Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg did a good job in the film, but I don't see them as those characters because Nathan Drake, come on. Nathan Drake is one of the best video game characters, and they're thinking of casting Tom Holland. I don't know, I just didn't see him as Nathan Drake. But the thing that doesn't make this movie terrible to me is that you can just watch this film as an adventure film. Don't watch this movie as an Uncharted film because you're going to be very nitpicky. I feel like that's why I didn't find Uncharted as terrible as everyone was saying. I think it's a fun film for how it is. Like, if you put it on TV in the background, it's an entertaining watch. But as an Uncharted film, it could have had potential. But unfortunately, this film just turns out not what I wanted. Like, as an Uncharted film, I feel like it kind of failed for me. But not a terrible film. It's a fun adventure film, nonetheless, but could have been better. Now, coming into my number 9 is what it says on my t-shirt right here. What a right t-shirt for this video. Thor Love and Thunder. Now, I loved Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is definitely one of my favorite MCU films that came out in a while. So, of course, Taika Waititi coming back, doing another Thor movie, I am in. The trailers look like a lot of fun. But here's the thing about Thor Ragnarok comparing to this movie. Thor Ragnarok, it has great comedy, but not just that. It has great drama and great action. It has a cohesive story. But for Thor Love and Thunder, I feel like Taika Waititi is thinking that the reason why we like Thor Ragnarok is the comedy. So he puts out a lot of comedy in this film, and I just find Thor Love and Thunder quite silly. At first, I did like Thor Love and Thunder. I thought it was a fun film, but this is why second viewings always change you. I find this movie very goofy. It felt like a spoof movie of the Thor movies, but it's still entertaining nonetheless. But I think comparing to Thor Ragnarok, I was expecting this movie to be much better. I do think Gore is a great villain. I do love his elements of the film, but the problem is his story elements mixed in with the comedy in the film, it did not work. It's like two stories mashed together and it did not work. Same with Natalie Portman as female Thor. I did like her in the film. I think she's better than she was in the first two Thor movies. But this movie is definitely all over the place, especially when it comes to the comedy. Yeah, Thor Love and Thunder, Taika Waititi, you did disappoint me this year. Now, coming into my number 8 is Don't Worry, Darling. I thought this movie is original and different, and I was excited for this movie from the trailers. I love Olivia Wilde as a director, I love Booksmart, and I heard a lot of behind-the-scenes drama for this film, so it got me a little worried, but I was still giving this movie a chance. That's what this is all about. Movies that I would give it a chance, but it didn't turn out the way I was expecting, and that is Don't Worry, Darling for me. Not a terrible movie. Florence Pugh absolutely stood out in this movie. She's great in the film, and just the whole mystery aspect is interesting, but the problem with Don't Worry, Darling is absolutely the script. I feel like this movie has a lot of things happening, but they don't really explain it all that much. Like, there's so many elements where I'm like, that could have been explored a lot freaking more, but they just pushed it out of the way. And I wish Don't Worry Darling has like an extended cut so it can explain what is going on, because there are some elements in this movie that don't make sense, and I still find this movie very original and different and has so much potential, but this movie kind of wasted it completely. I do think this movie is entertaining. It's a fine mystery film, but the script is definitely one of my biggest disappointments from this film. 7. Speaking of movies that could have been much better, Beast. I was excited for this movie from the trailers because I like creature flicks, especially Idris Elba fighting a lion. That is fine. I like those type of films, especially with a lion being a creature flick. Lions are terrifying, so it's interesting to see a lion taking over the creature flick genre. Unfortunately, this movie was kind of ruined by all the dumb decisions that the characters do in the film, and it really distracts me from this film. Especially the daughters in this film. They make some of the most dumbest decisions I have ever seen in a movie, where I literally want to yell at the theater, what are you doing? Yeah, this film is definitely an over-the-top creature flick film, and it goes to the point where it goes way too over the top. I feel like this film does have potential, you know, with a creature flick film. You know, like Crawl. I feel Crawl did that very well with its creature flick. Like, it goes over the top, but it also goes serious at the same time. I expected Beast to do that, and unfortunately, it does get a little bit goofy at a couple of scenes. But still a fun film. If you want to see the film as a guilty pleasure, check it out. But yeah, Idris Elba, you let me down also this year. 6. This is a confusing, disappointing movie because I like this movie, but I also didn't like this film. This film is a big mixed bag for me. Halloween Ends. Now, I was anticipating for this film because the final time with Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers, we wanted to see that. Halloween Kills failed, so I was giving this movie as much hope as possible. But when this movie came out, the story of the film wasn't what we expected. This is a story about this guy named Corey becoming the next Michael Myers. And I don't mind that story. I really don't. I did enjoy this movie for that. But the thing is, this movie is called Halloween Ends. It's about Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers. That's what we were anticipating for. Even the poster shows that. But it has nothing to do with the movie. Michael Myers is barely in this movie. He's not even in the movie all that much. But with the Corey story, I was like, okay, this film is taking risk. It's trying to do something different, and I enjoy it, but it's just put into the wrong film. And then when the ending comes in with Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers, it just came out of nowhere. Yeah, I can see why people were very disappointed by Halloween Ends, and I was disappointed by this movie because of how it's presented. But at the same time, I did enjoy the film as well because of the Corey story, in my personal opinion. A lot of people didn't like that. I didn't mind it. But it's disappointing because it's called Halloween Ends. It's supposed to be what it's supposed to be. Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers. Halloween Kills kind of lead up to it. And this movie kind of had so many ideas and it just crushed it together. And this movie is definitely a mess overall. 5. Okay, number 5. These are the top 5 movies that I was very anticipated for, but those movies sort of let me down. My number 5 is Strange World. New Disney film. I'm always excited for a Disney film coming out. So, of course, the director of Raya and the Last Dragon is doing this film. I was in. And the voice cast, Jake Gyllenhaal, Dennis Quaid, Gabrielle Union, I was in. This movie doesn't have as much marketing though. And then after I saw this movie, I can tell why. I would say Strange World is definitely one of the most forgettable animated films of the year. I do think the animation does look great in the film. It saves the film for me. It looks good on the big screen. But the problem with this movie is the story. This movie has a story that we've seen many times before, with characters that are disappointingly not memorable. It had its moments. It had its moments where I'm like, okay, it's interesting, especially with the third act, when Disney's like, it woke up, it did something different. But before that, it just turns into a generic adventure film that we've seen many times before. But the animation did save the movie. I don't hate this movie, but it's definitely going down the bottom of the least favorite Disney films out there. Now, some people might hate me for this, because I know there are some people that like this movie, but this is my subjective list. This is a bright example of people liking this movie, and I just didn't get it. That is X. I was excited for this movie because a lot of people said this movie is good, and I love A24. But I went into this movie blind, not knowing what this movie's about. And then when I walked out, I'm sorry, this is not a movie for me. I think the positive with X is that this film does a great job paying homage to the old 1970s horror films, you know, Friday the 13th and stuff. It's interesting. There are some interesting aspects of this film, and there are some good scares in this film, but unfortunately this movie just turns out to be I don't know, it's just kind of weird for me. I don't mind discussing things in films, I really don't mind. But this movie, to me, it just goes a little bit too far on it. I know some people like this film, but this is definitely one of those films that are not for everybody. So X, it's not really for me all that much. And I know there's a film called Pearl, which everyone says is very good. I'll still check it out, but I don't know, because X I was a little bit disappointed at. I'm not too anticipated for Pearl, but you know what? We'll see. We'll see. Now, my number 3, this is the movie that I didn't review on this channel. But I want to put it on this list because I remember watching this film very excited because I loved the first film. But it didn't turn out the way I was expecting. It turns out to be pretty forgettable. Disenchanted. Yes, I enjoyed the first Enchanted. I thought that movie was a lot of fun. I think it's a great Disney film with memorable songs, memorable characters. It just has everything original that I loved about it. And it feels like Disney for me. Disenchanted though, it tries. I'll give it that. It tries. But I just find Disenchanted just really generic and, in my opinion, kind of boring actually. There are some good moments in the film. The costume design is great. Amy Adams as Giselle. She still got it with Patrick Dempsey, James Marsden, and Dina Menzel especially. Her song in this movie. That's all I can remember from this film. Her song in this film is great. But the rest of the songs, it's not How Does She Know. It's not memorable. And I know it's hard to top the music in the first one, and even the movie in general. Definitely the first Enchanted is better than this film. I can see this film trying to be a good sequel, and it's fine. It's not, one of the most boring films of the year. It's just a film that's, very different from the first Enchanted movie, and it didn't do anything as unique like the first Enchanted did. Now, 2 and 1. These two are both blockbusters that I was really pumped for. I was giving it a chance, but they didn't turn out as I was expecting. Man, I am now skeptical of what the Wizarding World is going to do because Fantastic Beasts, The Secrets of Dumbledore, is such a letdown. I was giving this movie a chance because I was not a fan of The Crimes of Grindelwald. I was not a fan of that movie. So I was giving the third one a chance. And unfortunately, this movie, the problem with Fantastic Beasts and Secrets of Dumbledore is that there are so many things they put in the movie and it did not work. The storyline is very messy, it's all over the place, the movie doesn't really have a main plot, really. The magic elements are great, and Jude Law as Dumbledore. He sort of saved these movies, because I think Jude Law, especially in this movie, does a great performance in the film. What he did with his character with Grindelwald, I find it very, very interesting, the way they did that. And it's the best part of this movie, and that's why I don't find this movie on my wish list. It's not a terrible movie because of the ideas they put into it. And the magic, it's still there, but the story is not. This film is completely all over the place. The characters that we don't really care about, really, they're not as memorable as the Harry Potter characters, which is very disappointing. And I heard they're not going to make these movies anymore after this movie, and I think that's a good choice. That could be a rumor, I don't know. But I think that's a good choice because the Fantastic Beasts movies, to me, it just gets more disappointing and disappointing and disappointing. Okay, my number 1. This is the movie that disappointed me the most in 2022. This is the movie that's on my top 10 most anticipated movies of the year. I was so excited for this movie. But this film was just fine. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is absolutely my most disappointing film of the year. Now, great stuff in the film. There are some good stuff. The horror elements that Sam Raimi done, it's great. And Sam Raimi's tackle with this film is great. The filmmaking is good. Don't get me wrong. And the point of my disappointing list is that none of these movies are terrible. Some of these movies are fun. Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness is fine. I think it's fine. It's visually stunning. But this is what disappointed me the most out of all the movies that I have seen this year. This is one of those movies where I want it to be explored. I want it to be exposition heavy because the multiverse, after No Way Home, I was excited to see it more explored in this film. And this film kind of gave that from the trailers. But this film is one of those films that basically shows and tells. And I know that's a great thing about films. It shows and tells. But this is one of those films that I feel like it should tell than show. I wanted to learn more about the multiverse. But it wasn't really explored in the film because it's still a Doctor Strange film. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just feel like from the trailers, I was expecting something big. Like, the trailers are huge. I was like, this is definitely going to be the biggest MCU film. But it just turns to a fine MCU film with horror elements that are very good. But the story, it could have been so much better. And especially with the multiverse, it could have been explored a lot more in the film. The cameos in the film are great, but, they're completely wasted. They're just in the film and then they died, like, after 10 minutes. Even though their deaths are pretty creative, I just felt like there's no point for them being in the movie, in my opinion. Now, if you like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I'm happy. I'm very happy. To me, I just find this movie fine. It's visually stunning, but especially that this is my anticipated film of the year, I was so pumped for this movie. It didn't turn out the way I wanted, so that's why I'm putting Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness as my number one, because this is the movie that I was very disappointed the most in 2022. So guys, don't spoil my top 10 most disappointing movies of 2022. My surprising list and my best list is coming very, very soon. Tomorrow I'll do my surprising list. So, thank you guys so much for watching. What are your top 10 movies that disappointed you the most in 2022? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you guys follow me on social media links down below. Facebook, Stardust, Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. Keep contact with me. And make sure you guys subscribe to my channel notified for my latest movie reviews and other movie related content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a nice day.